Hello and welcome to the first of the OJLL series previews here on the Cross Culture Daily. Getting kind of back into things here right before the playoffs. Obviously been a wild summer out here in Ontario and want to go through each of these series in depth. You can find this on our YouTube page and at lacrosseculturedaily.com. We'll be doing videos like this all throughout the playoffs, and I'll be on a bunch of the individual broadcasts as well. So let's start with Orangeville versus Beaches. There's no other way to put it. This is the most anticipated first round matchup I can ever recall seeing. Everyone at this point knows the story. All of the off-field stuff at this point has been settled. Beaches is not getting their games back. They're finishing at 9-11, and they have a first round series set up with the Orangeville Northmen beginning Friday night at Tony Rose Arena. Again, there's no kind of other way to put it. These are two teams with legitimate opportunities to win a Minto Cup. In fact, you could argue that these are the two Minto Cup favorites, with due respect to Coquitlam, who's putting it together an incredible season out west, and they're playing in the first round. What does that mean? Well, the most significant thing that it means is it's going to be a 5-game series rather than a 7-game series. As it progresses, you go 5 in the first round and then 7 by the time you get to the final. So it's going to be a quicker series, and we're going to solve this thing pretty soon. Ever since I was a kid going to games, there's certain playoff series that just have a different aura about them, and normally that involves some sort of off-the-floor storyline. With thinking back in my head about going to games, Orangeville Six Nations when I was a kid, Whitby Six Nations, Orangeville Whitby, so many great players. This series kind of has that feel. People have strong feelings about what has happened this year, and people have strong allegiances on both sides of this thing. It's going to be a good one. You've seen Tony Rose full before. It's going to be more full this week. You've seen it hot in there. It's going to be more hot. You've seen intensity this summer. It's going to be more intense, all right? Everything gets ratcheted up at this time of year in Ontario, and you add in some off-field stuff, that's when things really get intense. But this is going to be an incredible display of lacrosse for 5 games. I do believe that Ontario lacrosse is the best development league in the world, and I think this is going to be a good example of that. Another thing that this series is going to feature is, I think, the 2 best goalies in Ontario. Thomas Kajzak has been outstanding all year long, and then Connor O'Toole comes over to the Northmen from Brampton at the trade deadline along with Dante Bowen and Bowie Horseman in a deal that really kind of shifted, I think, a little bit of the power balance. Beach is also loaded up. Eric McDonald, Will Sheehan came over for them. Basically the 2 biggest trades in Ontario. These 2 teams are fully loaded up for a run, hoping to go out west. But the goaltending is going to be important. If one of these guys gets badly outplayed by the other, it's a wrap. You have to have outstanding goaltending at this time of year, and really at any time of year in box lacrosse. It is the most important position, and those guys are going to have a good battle. I would expect them both to be better than the last time we saw them, which was in Ted Reeve Arena just 2 weeks ago. They'll both be better than that. That game was 14-13 in overtime. I don't expect the scores to be that high. For one thing, you can expect the whistles to get a little bit put away a little bit in the playoffs. The defense get ratcheted up a little bit. The physicality will definitely get ratcheted up, and typically the scores will come down in the playoffs. Another fun storyline, we mentioned the trades. I think there's a good battle in this series between Bowie Horseman and Will Sheehan, 2 fifth-year players, both right-handed offensive players, and they both came over from new teams at the deadline, and they've both been really good for their new clubs. Horseman scored the OT winner in that first game. He's got 13 goals in 8 games for the Northmen. Sheehan has been lighting it up as well for the Beaches. He's got 8 power play goals in his 8 games with the Beaches, so doing a lot of his damage on the power play. Those guys are both right-handed shooters, and they're both really, really good shooters. Similar to the goaltending, I think if one of those guys gets outplayed by the other in this series, that's going to be something to really watch. And the goalies are going to have to be good on those guys because they do most of their damage from outside. Horseman scored the OT winner in that last game between the Beaches on an outside rip. He had 3 goals in that game, all from the outside, and Sheehan can do it too. Different kind of shooters. Horseman goes usually with an overhand release, really loves that kind of fake twister to the top right corner, seems to really fool goalies. If you watch when he scores, oftentimes goalies aren't really close to it. That's a sign that they're not reading it out of the release. And then Sheehan goes a lot with the low-to-low worm burner. It seems to be very, very effective. Also, to note on that, Connor O'Toole uses a plastic stick. The wall the only goalie I've seen still using that. I think maybe that gives Sheen a little bit of an advantage on those low-to-low shots, just a little bit of a smaller stick down there. I don't know if that's, just kind of a theory of mine. A lot of goaltenders out there would know more about that than I do, but just kind of something to watch. And then the other big topic I wanted to talk about was the health and the freshness of Beaches. The most important thing that has happened in this last week is that Beaches has had, basically 2 weeks off. When I saw them last at Ted Reeve against Orangeville, they had played like 4 or 5 games that week. They looked gassed. And obviously, they have not had the opportunity that most good teams have to kind of sail into the playoffs without a worry. They've been, white knuckling it all summer long, but they got a good break. They played Oakville on Monday. They took care of business. They beat Mimico badly last week. So a couple good efforts for them to finish this thing off going into the playoffs. And most importantly, they have only had 2 games in the last about 14 days. For guys who have played a lot of games, especially the college guys, that's big. And remember, these guys are young. They're in incredible shape. They can bounce back quickly. So I think the freshness is going to be key. I would expect Beaches to look different than they did the last time we saw them on the OJLL broadcast. With that being said, the most important thing for Beaches, which I can't report on because I don't know, is getting some of their guys back. They've been banged up on the back end. Guys, especially like David Petterkin, I think he's a really good player. Haven't seen him in a couple weeks here. A couple other guys on the back end. Obviously, they lost a couple guys in the off-floor situation. And, it's really tough for them to sustain more injuries. We'll see if we get some of those guys back. Again, I'm not a reporter on this stuff, so I don't know. But if they can get a few of their healthy bodies back there, that'll be really important. So I want to get into some keys for each team, right? So let's start with Beaches. The first one is Collison's got to get to the net, right? Matt Collison was outstanding in that game against Orangeville just 2 weeks ago. He's been dominant this season. He is massive. He is the biggest offensive player, at least at that high of a level that I can remember. He's about 6'4", 6'5". Fans of the field game will know that he had an outstanding season this year at Johns Hopkins, really lit it up down there for the Blue Jays, and it's in a lot of similar ways as he gets it done in the box. When he gets ahead of steam, he's a load. And if there's one kind of chink in the armor with the Orangeville defense, and actually with the Beaches defense as well, is they're a little bit small. Right? Bowen's big, Long's big, Graydon Stokes got some size. I'm not saying everyone's tiny back there, and I'm certainly not trying to call anybody out, but Collison is going to have physical advantages in a lot of matchups, right? So for Orangeville, I would expect to try to get Long and Bowen on him as much as they can, and then Collison's got to get to the net. Firth, I think, is going to get his looks, get his chances, but Collison really gives them that other presence, and when they're playing together, that's when they're so dynamic, because if you want to put the big guys on Firth, they got to really stick with him and hang through all of his slick and quickness, and then they got to hang with Collison. When he settles a little bit, maybe lets him off the hook. So his ability to get to the net, get good looks is going to be important. The second thing is Eric McDonald. He has been really, really good for Beaches. I think he's played 8 games for the Beach. He scored 5 goals. He's a defender coming out the back end, and I watched him play the first game after he got traded, or first or second game. He's got the green light. He's shooting a lot. It's clear that he's been told he should be flying up the floor, and the coaching staff has given him the green light. And like I said, with 5 goals, he's been pretty good at it. He just had one with Oakville, and then the change of scenery has really benefited him this year. And he's been really good. And those goals, like I said, in the playoffs are harder to come by. If they can get one from him every game, or one every couple of games, that's going to be really big. And obviously, if you're Orangeville, you got to find number 5 in blue and yellow, because he's flying. He's got, like I said, 5 goals, 1 assist in 8 games for the Beaches, and he's going to be looking to go. Also had a nice scrap last week to get himself tuned up for the playoffs. And then the last Beaches key, you got to protect the paint. A lot of good looks last time for Orangeville. Kajik bailed them out a little bit. I think Kajik, might have even been a little bit tired in that game too. So I'm expecting him to be really, really good in this series. But they got to keep guys out of the paint. Keep it to outside shots. I do believe that Kaizek is the best goalie in the province, at least has played the best so far this season. So if they keep the shots to the outside, I think they'll be in business. And on that note, want to mention also with McDonald scoring, Kaizek, a very good thrower. He's actually had a goal this year, has 9 assists, so 10 points. If you look at the Beaches scoring chart, that would put him pretty high on the scoring chart for the year. Obviously, there's some missed points in there. That's a topic for another day. But their ability to get stops, get transition, from outside shots into Kaizek to transition to guys like McDonald is going to be really important for Beaches, again, when it gets harder to score in the playoffs. Switching to the Northmen, the most important thing is clean breakouts. We've seen Beaches kill teams on the forecheck, the ride, whatever Canadian-American version of this you want to use. Firth is unbelievable at causing turnovers in, you'd call it backcourt in basketball. Collison had a big one at the end of the last game as well. They're all really good at it, and they're going to stay on the floor. They're not going to run off. Firth is going to stay and see what he can do most times. If you're Orangeville, you can't try to run by too many of those because they'll strip you, and you also don't want to be throwing through sticks. You need to have 2-3 guys who are outlets, pass the ball, get it out of trouble, and just be clean with that. I think we've seen Orangeville at times. It can get a little bit scrambly. I think they'd probably agree with you that that's something that happens when they're not at the top of their game. If Orangeville can limit turnovers between the hockey blue lines and in the backcourt, it's going to be really effective for them. The second thing is they got to make it difficult for Willem. He's been the best player in the country this year. I believe he is the best player in the country, one of the best junior players I've ever seen, frankly. And he's cooled off just a little bit recently, but we're talking a really little bit. He's had 78 points just in the 12 games that he's been eligible for, and he was on a faster clip than that before the stat adjustments took place. So he is the best player. If you're Orangeville, you just have to try to take away his hands and his eyes as much as you can. I'm really excited to see what Willem can do in this series. I think he's an incredible player, an incredible person, and I think he'll be motivated to come out here and make a splash. If you're Orangeville, you got to do everything you can to make somebody else beat you. And then the last thing is depth scoring, right? So Spalina ended up leading the league in official points. Liam Matthews has been right there. Trey Deere has been really good as well. And then Bowie Horseman has kind of been their fourth guy. They're going to need other guys to step up. Brian Jackman has been really good since coming over from Oakville. 7 goals, 12 assists in 8 games. That's a faster pace than he was on in Oakville. Another guy to watch is Aiden Long. He's another defender similar to McDonald, but Long has 13 goals, 4 assists in just 11 games this year. For my money, he's been the best transition player. He's big, he's athletic. He's heading to Cornell for hockey, so soft spot for him in my heart. But they have guys who can get up. Bowen can get up and score as well. They can get secondary scoring either from their D guys or from guys outside of that top 4. Look for as well for the Sanderson brothers to feature large in this series. They're going to be in business. Again, game 1 goes Friday night at 20 Roads. It's going to be hot. It's going to be packed. It's going to be awesome. I think this is going to be a series that we're all going to remember for a long time. I'll be on the call tonight with Matthew Carrick for the OJLL, and we're going to have to see how these things take place. It's going to be a long series. As they say, the series doesn't start until the home team wins. I would expect Orangeville to have a significant home floor advantage tonight and throughout the playoffs. It's going to be a fun one up Highway 10 in Orangeville. Looking forward to it, and thanks for watching.